Hello, my name is Jenny McClintock, and I hope you enjoy my presentation on my philosophy of education. I was born to parents who witnessed and personally participated in incredibly significant events in the history of U.S. education. My father grew up in rural northwest Montana and went to school through the 8th grade in a one-room schoolhouse. That would have likely been the end of his education had his parents not moved to a larger city in Montana before he entered high school. He was able to attend a newly built public high school, which he credits for paving the way to college and beyond. My mother grew up on the other end of the Missouri River in St. Louis and attended the first desegregated high school in St. Louis the same year the Supreme Court ruled in Brown versus the Board of Education that segregation in public schools was unconstitutional. Her high school was a subject of several news articles and an Academy Award-nominated documentary film, all while she attended. I grew up hearing stories about their experiences, and it felt like I was reading something out of a history book. What they experienced was exciting, revolutionary, and groundbreaking. Their experiences had an enormous impact on me. My goal is to likewise participate in educational history as a teacher, whether it is simply being the absolute best teacher I can be, a radical act in and of itself, or participating in another landmark educational event for the history books. I plan to have an impact on my students and on education. We live in a world characterized by diversity. Schools, first and foremost, should teach students values and behaviors that will prepare them for a future in such a society. The purpose of education is to teach creative and analytical thinking and to spark curiosity, imagination, and a desire to be a lifelong learner in each and every student. A teacher's role has changed considerably since the one-room school days of my father's childhood. The role of teacher today is multifaceted. A teacher is required to really tune into each individual student and challenge and inspire them to reach higher and excel and exceed their own expectations of themselves. A conscientious and passionate teacher arrives at school prepared with comprehensive, exciting lessons that are culturally relevant to stimulate each and every student and to help them grow. A teacher is a counselor, a mentor, a disciplinarian, a role model. Often teachers spend more time with students than their own parents do during the school year, elevating teacher to a significant position in a student's life. For some students, their teachers are the only positive role models in their life. This is a tremendous responsibility, one which teachers cannot take lightly. According to my son Calvin, a 7th grader, a student's role is to be open to learning, to accept change, and to use failure as inspiration to try harder. I love this insight as it suggests children are to be both recipients and participants in their own education. Students are responsible with teachers, administrators, and staff support to continue to stretch and grow each year to meet the increasingly demanding academic requirements of their grades. Students are responsible for completing homework assignments on time, taking notes in class, participating in discussions, and observing the rules of the school and classroom. Students should also, perhaps with a little nudging, take part in school-sponsored extracurriculars like sports, academic and leadership organizations, fine arts programs, and service opportunities. This fosters appropriate social interaction, peer relationships, and community involvement. California is the arts and entertainment capital of the world, and it is fitting that we recognize the importance of dance and theater as vital elements of our arts curriculum. How is it possible that ours is one of only 2 states in the country that does not have specific credentials for dance or theater? Senator Ben Allen. Well, Senator Allen, I will tell you, the reason was a typo in legislation written over 40 years ago that required credentials for music and art instead of music and arts. This inadvertently left out theater and dance. In 2016, Senator Ben Allen introduced Legislative Bill 916, the Theater and Dance Act, or ta-da, in response to concerns raised at a hearing of the Joint Committee of the Arts, that under the current system, people who graduate with a degree in dance can only teach dance after obtaining a physical education credential, and people who graduate with a degree in theater can only teach after receiving an English credential. Advocates pointed out that the standards needed to teach dance or theater are quite different from those of physical education or English. To tell people who have earned a degree in dance or theater that they can't teach in their respective fields unless they get a credential in PE or English is a disservice to them as teachers and to their students and the subject matter, Allen said. In November 2016, the TDA bill was signed by Governor Jerry Brown along with its Visual and Performing Arts Act, requiring California to revamp visual and performing arts standards to match the National Core Arts Standards by January 2019. The single-subject credential programs will follow that deadline by a few years. I plan to be the first in California to receive a credential in the subject of theater. What an exciting time for arts education. It would seem I am also destined to participate in U.S. educational history. My approach when teaching any subject matter is always to work on a growth mindset with my students, particularly when it comes to the arts. I like to foster an environment of compassion and acceptance among my students, an environment where they feel brave enough to put themselves out there in uncomfortable territory and to support others in this difficult process. I like to teach them to not be afraid of failure. In fact, failure is often the best way for artists to learn. Only after students feel comfortable and can learn to manage their fears will they be able to not only find success, but joy in theater, and a sense of community that is often missing in the lives of students today. My goal is to help students be more self-aware, to take personal inventory, and to be honest about who they are and what they want, and have the courage to go after it. High school students are as unique and varied as our country's population. They each come from diverse backgrounds and bring with them a multitude of skills. But it's what they have in common that I find so fascinating and inspiring as an educator. According to a poll of 6,000 U.S. teenagers, 89% of teens report that they enjoy school. 98% of teens say that a teacher has had a positive impact on them, and 61% of teens report being in love. 1 out of 2 teens say that they have personally struggled with mental illness. Depression and anxiety are ranked number 1 and number 2 as the most common form of mental illness suffered by teens. And 95% of teens have felt inferior at some point in their lives. High school students have a larger emotional vocabulary than younger students with which to work. Theater has the capacity to help students process their emotions in a safe, fun, and creative environment. Nowhere will I have a greater impact on students than in high school. Students learn best when they recognize themselves, their beliefs, and their background in the lessons. I will start each class with a segment called Today in Theater History, where I will review significant moments in the history of theater. I will also feature a musical of the day, where I will discuss the history and relevant information of a particular musical, after which I will show a clip of a musical number from that show. During Hispanic Heritage Month, Theater History and Musical of the Day will revolve around the many wonderful contributions and talents of Hispanic Americans in theater. During Black History Month, I will focus on the great contributions and rich history of African Americans in theater. Asian Pacific American Month will likewise feature information pertaining to this culture. During this portion, I will ask students questions to assess what they know about plays, actors, and musicals. Assuming a student comes to beginning theater with no previous knowledge, I will start with a questionnaire about what their experience has been thus far with theater. I will then begin with the basics. If I'm lucky enough to teach at a school that has a theater, we will review stage terms while on the stage. Students will be quizzed on this. From there, we will move on to pantomime and improv. Students will be required to silently act out scenarios alone. Then they will be placed in groups and required to improv scenes with a specific goal in mind. They will be graded on how clearly understandable their scenes are. We will discuss as a class. I will focus on the mechanics of breathing, projection, body position, relaxation. After I teach the first 5 tools of acting, they must pick a monologue from a play to perform in class. They will be graded based on their execution of the 5 acting tools previously discussed. They will be required to watch a play and write an essay review about it, pulling in details they have learned from class. Intermediate theater will focus on expounding on the first 5 tools of acting and teaching all 12 tools of acting. Students will begin this class by performing monologues in order for me to assess their skill level and tailor my teaching to help them. There will be more group scene work, pulling for more challenging plays. Students will be required to act, direct, costume, and design sets for their scenes. I will also require students to audition for and compete in acting competitions outside of school. Students will have to film themselves at home and submit their auditions online. We will use class time to audition for and rehearse one-act plays we perform throughout the year. The entire month of April, we will focus on Shakespeare, his monologues and plays. We will perform a student-produced Shakespeare play at the end of the month. Their final will be to perform a monologue and turn in the notes on the 12 acting tools and how they employed them in this monologue. Advanced acting will largely center on techniques for auditioning. We will dig even deeper into the 12 acting tools. We will learn about significant drama teachers in history and their various techniques. I will require students to audition for competitions, and we will use class time to practice these competition pieces. We will audition and rehearse the fall play in class. In April, we will focus on Shakespeare and perform a student-produced play. Their fall final will be to audition for a college theater program. Their end-of-the-year final will be to write and perform in a one-act play. Theater Tech will go over set design, directing, costumes, makeup, choreography, and stage managing. I plan to have experts in the field come in to share their experiences on these subjects. Students in the class will be required to work backstage for 10 hours on school plays and musicals. They will be assessed on technical terms. They will design costumes, makeup, and sets. They will be required to learn and perform dance numbers. And they will also have to watch a play and review it based on the lessons learned in class. Many high school students think of school and education as something that happens to them, or something they have to do in order to level up in life. I do not share that philosophy, and it will not be like that in my class. I see myself as a guide helping students recognize their potential and finding their own voice in the context of theater. Some of my students may never perform another play after high school. Some may go on to Broadway stardom. But all of them, for a brief moment in their lives, will participate in something magical and will leave with tools necessary to navigate life's challenges.